Hello, friends, friendos, friendettes, and friend non-binaries. Welcome back to Uncle Robert Plays The Binding of Isaac Afterbirth Plus. As you can see, I've beaten Boss Rush with Apollyon. I actually was recording an Apollyon run, at least I thought I was. And at the end, I hit the stop record button, went back to review the footage, realized there was nothing there, and I must have not hit the actual recording button. I did die, that's why we're at -5. That's interesting. I'd rather have Void, though. I'm pretty sure we've had telekinesis before. And as you recall, what that does is projectiles that are flying towards you, you essentially catch them and fling them back in, I guess, whatever direction you're facing or shooting in. Telekinesis is not something I use a lot, so I can't remember the precise ups and downs of it. Whoa. Anyway, I had started to talk about horror fiction since... oh, there you are. Since, it is October, the spookiest month of the year, and one of my personal favorites. Not just because of, spooky, but because I just like the fall. I like the changing of the colors of the leaves. I like the shortening days, even though I do like long days, so I will admit that. I like, what else do I like about fall? Love the harvest, love the corn mazes, just the whole atmosphere of it. So anyway, in that lost episode that was never actually recorded, I had begun discussing horror fiction. Horror fiction I like to consume, like, for example, movies, horror-themed television shows, horror-themed video games, as well as... Oh, you taunt me, little bomb. Why am I going through all this trouble? Might as well, I mean... What else am I going to do with myself? Anyway, but, yeah, and also writing horror fiction, which is... That's kind of my, genre of choice when it comes to writing, which I'm sure by now you probably know is another interest of mine. Anyway, H.P. Lovecraft, that, the white supremacists that even make other white supremacists uncomfortable. He once said that, what did he say again? Yeah, that's me. Welcome to Uncle Robert's Ramblings, people. Oh, cool. That's a good thing to get right at this point in time. But anyway, he famously said that, the oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear, and the oldest and strongest type of fear is fear of the unknown. Now, horror fiction in and of itself traffics not just in fear, but in disgust as well. That's an important thing to remember about it. Fear and disgust are the two biggest, emotions. Well, I mean, they are emotions, not I guess they're emotions. But they are the two biggest emotions that horror fiction traffics in. And of course, there's obviously different types of fear. And something that, horror authors or horror creators do is... they want to write stories to scare people. You know what? I think I actually might take this instead of sucking it up. I was going to suck it up, but maybe, who knows, we might get a whole bunch of balls of bandages. And anyway, what was I saying? Oh, yes. Something horror authors do, I know Stephen King definitely does this, is make a list of things that frighten them and use that list as a basis for their stories. I'm afraid of isolation. I'm going to write a story that evokes fear of isolation, evokes that fear. Now, something else that some horror authors will do is, well, something that I actually find kind of interesting, and in some ways strive to do it within my own work is not necessarily oh, that's rough. Anyway, is maybe list things that I personally am not afraid of, but I know that other people are afraid of. Like, for example, take you're gonna make me do this the hard way, aren't you? Take parenting, for example. Parents are often... Ooh. Yeah, I guess I'll take that. Something that terrifies many, if not all parents to no end, is the thought of their children suffering in some way. Like, for example, being kidnapped, being abused, hurt, or making foolish decisions that result in them suffering in, some other way. And pretty much any parent can relate to this. Now, while I myself don't have children, I do have people in my life that I do care about, and so I can empathize and understand this particular fear. Even though it's not something that is really a concern for me, specifically in that particular context, as that, to wit, I'm afraid of my children getting hurt, or getting into an accident, or getting bullied at school, or kidnapped, or whatever. And so, another good item. Man. What do you got going on in here? Oh, these are both actually pretty solid. What do I need to do? Okay, I have a lot of stuff to do with Apollyon, so I don't have to worry about angel runs. So I will take this. And I will take this because reasons, I guess. Alright, so I've been pretty much everywhere now at this point. Yeah, I've done the entire floor, I think. Not the entire floor, but enough of it. So it's not just about what scares me, it's also about what scares, well, everyone else. And you could say there are certain universal fears, like Lovecraft stated, fear of the unknown. There's fear of death, obviously, fear of loneliness, fear of physical discomfort or pain, fear for the welfare and well-being of loved ones. Man, you taunt me, Golden Chest. Wait for it. And these are all fears that, even if these are not things that, you yourself are frightened of, they are fears that you can relate to, just as a human being. I mean, being scared of this stuff is essentially part of the human experience, right? Ooh, that was unfortunate. Yeah, sure, I'll go in the store. Now, what scares me? All kinds of things scare me. I honestly kind of don't know if I want to go into that. I mean, it's not like I haven't gotten up close and personal with you guys before, but when it comes to, I don't do all that much personal self-examination, which I probably should start doing, particularly if I do want to write about something as really, an emotion as universal and visceral as fear, and also disgust to an extent. But I'll get to discuss later. Let's go back to fear. Now, should a horror film scare people? I mean, the obvious answer is yes. That's the entire point of, well, not just horror films, but, games and novels and just horror in general. That's the point, isn't it? To scare the audience or the reader? Is it really? Because sometimes, like all fiction, in many ways, horror, it's not scaring, your reader, your audience, the player. I'm just going to use the term audience just because it's a nice general term. I can just apply to pretty much everything, but sometimes frightening the audience isn't actually what you want to do. I mean, all fiction in some way, shape, or form wants the goal is to connect with the audience in some way. And with horror, you would say do that by evoking these fears, these common fears that most people tend to have, or that most people at the very least can empathize with. I think I might want to check out the item room first, though, just in case. But it's it is important. Wait, what was I talking about? I was talking about connecting with your audience or reader or what have you. All right. Well, that was a swing and a miss. But something that I think this is something that a lot of creators or even analysts and whatnot, they tend to either gloss over, ignore, or just completely forget about. That in many cases, ultimately, your goal is not necessarily to scare the audience or to evoke a specific emotion within the audience, but rather to, there's not really anything in here I want, so I'm just going to blow this up and, take that and just, what's this? This is a world card. Yeah, so take the Emperor and just head on out. Anyway, like, horror does build this connection by, well, scaring people. Oh, little Gertie, you frightened me there for a second. Yeah, that's often the goal of, horror creators, be they writers, game developers, whatever, is to build that specific connection. I think I'd rather have range and shot speed, but whatever. And they do it through fear or disgust. Now, how well you can connect to a horror film, I guess, is determined by a lot of things. Most often, or by when I say a horror film, I mean a work of horror fiction. Excuse me, just got a caffeinate quickly. Can be largely determined by whether or not it scares you or disgusts you. Disgust is a pretty visceral emotion, much like fear. Although instead of evoking that survival-based terror, it instead tends to... Oh, wait a minute. I regret that. Okay. I should have replaced that bomb in a better spot. Really? Okay. You know what? Fine. I'll open it and see what we get. Anyway, disgust is more all about the wrongness of something or a situation. About how it's essentially... what's the word I'm looking for? Huh. Okay, I'm out. See ya. Hey, Gertie. Yeah, things that are intrinsically wrong or offensive by their nature will disgust you. Things that are threatening will scare you. And sometimes some people can be hard to scare, and especially if you don't handle it properly. And disgust is also another emotion that's very difficult to... I don't really want that, but so I'll come back when I have a full charge. And like disgust, much like fear, can be a difficult emotion to evoke, particularly in people who you don't know, like the general public, for example, if you're a fiction creator. And did I? I don't think I can spare a key right now. Even though there might be something really cool inside that chest. Let's just... there may also be like a single half red heart. And scaring people is arguably almost as difficult as making them laugh, if not more so. I couldn't say for certain which one is harder to accomplish. I mean, personally, I find it easier to be funny and to make people laugh than I find it to, frighten them. But, that's just me. That's just my own personal experience. Other people may have had different experiences, and as such would probably may, disagree with me. So that is something else that needs to be taken into consideration. We're all scared of the same things, but we're also all scared of different things. We're all disgusted by the same things, but at the same time, we are again also all disgusted by different things. Excuse me. And so what do you do? What do you try for? This is one of the reasons why you have the common fears thing. Like, for example, what Lovecraft had said in the past about the oldest and strongest type of fear being fear of the unknown. The unknown scares almost everyone. Ooh, that was spooky. Yeah, the unknown scares almost everybody. So it's one of those nice sort of universal fears that you can play upon. And it's one of the reasons why people play upon that particular fear. Also, the fear that adults can have regarding their children. You know what? I think I might actually just try that. Well, I kind of regret that now, but what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Oh, well, that changes everything. And so, even though you can, like Stephen King, write novels or create horror fiction derived from your own personal fears, there is a chance that unless your personal fears are very common and potentially even universal, what you think scares people might actually not frighten them at all. Like, I remember once I had a martial arts instructor that told me, never ever threaten someone, because when you threaten people, you're telling them what you are afraid of. Because you're threatening, unless you know this person very well, and you know exactly what scares them, when you threaten them, what you're doing, essentially, is threatening them with something that you think is scary, that you think is, would be a serious issue or problem. And just because you think that something's frightening, doesn't mean that they do. Like, for example, threatening to beat somebody up. Well, for all you know, that person's a very good fighter, or maybe they just really love fighting. Whoops. Oh, that's... Okay. That didn't end nearly as badly as it could have. And by that, I mean I didn't die, so I got that going for me, which was nice. Yeah, you know what? I think I will blow this up for that key, because I need me some keys. So, you can cater to these very common fears. Of course, not everyone will have them. And sometimes fear, even outside of horror fiction, fear can be used to make a character more sympathetic or even less sympathetic, depending on precisely what it is they're afraid of. I think I will buy this because I have no idea how much money I have. I think I might take that too. Okay, no, thank you. Sure, I'll pick this up. Excuse me. And anyway, like for example, fear of financial ruin, fear for the fates of one's family. These are generally considered, I don't know, I guess you could say, noble fears. Fear for one's own safety is relatable, but in certain contexts, it might be seen as not quite so noble. Particularly if that fear overrides and what was I saying? Yes, particularly if the fear of for one's safety, okay, no thanks, causes one to behave in a manner that is harmful to others. Like, we could call that cowardice, for example. So unless you're an objectivist, and that's a rant for those guys are a rant for another day. But unless you're an objectivist, putting your own needs above others and allowing others to suffer because you're afraid to help them is typically not viewed as an act that people should be proud of. Huh. Wow, that was interesting. I was not expecting to get hit by that. Now, disgust is also pretty subjective in some cases and objective in others. The uncanny valley, for example, it's evokes. Oh, geez. I really hope that I don't end up killing myself here. Anyway, like I was saying, the uncanny valley definitely does evoke, you know, feelings of disgust within. I don't think I want this. Within most people. Let's take that instead. Yeah, I think we're good for this floor. Because, you know, something that is close to being human but really isn't, and is intrinsically, it's inhuman, but it looks similar enough to a human that it could possibly pass for one, but not in a really, not in a particularly, not in a manner that makes it pleasing to the eye. Something that's just barely inhuman enough that, oh dear. Oh, that did absolutely nothing. Huh, alright, cool. That awkward moment when your tears down does not give you a tears down. It'll puts you at the tears cap. Whoops. Whoops. But anyway, while fear and disgust are essentially the staples of horror, like I was saying before, they can be used in other forms of fiction. Stop it, please. I'm begging you. To evoke sympathy or antipathy towards... I should probably see if I can... Oh, wait a minute. I just realized that I'm almost dead. This is not good. Yeah, sympathy or antipathy in other people, like cowardice, like I mentioned before. Come on. Yeah, I think I will Yera that just because I'm going to need those. Also, disgust, people who are disgusted at things that are actually considered socially acceptable. For example, homophobes, for example, or racists who might feel disgust at interracial relationships, or just, you know, people who are members of another race in general. You know, these people are definitely considered viewed with antipathy. Yeah, I think, yeah, sure, I'll take that. And, like, antipathy, in case you didn't know, is the opposite of sympathy. Is there a tinted rock in here? No? Okay. But I mean, fear and disgust are universal. This is why that, you know, you see them in a variety of works of fiction, as opposed to simply, you know, horror in and of itself. Like, you can contrast that with, say, romantic love and eroticism, which you tend to see almost exclusively in romance and erotic fiction. I mean, these elements can pop up in horror fiction as well, because the reproductive drive is pretty much just as powerful as the drive to survive. The survival instinct. Those are basically the two for lack of a better term, biggest, the two biggest aspects of any, or the two biggest motivators for every living organism there is out there. You know, stay alive for as long as possible, reproduce, and spread your genes. And, I guess and because of this, sorry, these particular emotions can be viewed in many ways as universal. Everybody, I guess you could say, wants to feel loved, or everybody puts their pants on one leg at a time, if you catch my drift. Okay. Everybody has experienced fear at some point. Everybody has seen things that they consider wrong or horrible. You know, witnessed, experienced. They may. Stop it! Stop it! What is this? Dig out, huh? What? Okay, that's. Oh, the fanny pack. That's why I'm getting those funky drops. What was this again? The Fool card? Okay. Yeah, these are universal experiences, and because the genre of horror is... Oh, alright, that's not so bad. Alright, this is not a proper shop. And because the genre of horror, and to an extent also things like romance and erotica, are based on these universal experiences, they have more or less universal appeal. Where am I going? Which definitely, I think, explains why they are so enduring as genres. Oh, I almost walked into the... why they're so popular, why they're so, I guess, profitable, you could say. Just because these are experiences that everyone can relate to. I got a range out of that. That's unfortunate. Well, I mean, not really unfortunate, but range is... I kind of would have wanted... I kind of want something with a little more punch. I mean, 7.5 damage... The stats are good, okay? Let's be honest here. My stats are good. Let me just stop complaining about that nonsense for a sec. Definitely not getting a devil deal, so, you know, there's that. Yeah. Whoa, son. Nanomachines. But yeah, the point I'm trying to make, like I was talking earlier about, is the point of horror fiction of, you know, whatever, you know, whatever, to actually frighten or disgust your audience. But I mean, like I said before, the point of all fiction is to connect to the audience. And because there'll be horror movies that I can watch and enjoy, but they don't scare me, they don't gross me out or disturb me. Excuse me. But I can still enjoy them from, like, I guess you could say an aesthetic point of view. I can appreciate the aesthetics of the tale, I can appreciate the story, I can appreciate the build-up. Oh, thank you, ball of bandages, blocking that shot. Well, they don't necessarily scare me or spook me or creep me out or gross me out. Like a good example of this, for example, excuse me, I have to move up a bit, is A found footage film called The Taking of Deborah Logan. Here it had like a jump scare here and there, but the thing I really enjoyed about it was the way the story unraveled, the nature of the story itself. Yeah, and to an extent, the aesthetics of the film. This could come in handy, actually. I might want stuff other than cards to drop. Get away from me! Whoa. Like, there have been some horror films and such that a lot of people would find frightening or disgusting that I would just not like at all. Yikes. And, like, even horror games as well. Like, for example, the one game that I don't know if I mentioned in this episode, but Darkwood, I guess I do kind of find it a little fear-inducing. Although I will admit, okay, I might need to actually use the strength guard here. I think I will, actually, just for the extra health and damage. The Skolex is annoying as hell. Skolex doesn't scare me; he just aggravates me. Can I? I can poison him. Nice, actually, even if I'm not damaging that part of his body. But say Bloodborne, for example. Bloodborne is a horror game. You could definitely call it that. Specifically, it's like a Lovecraftian cosmic horror type game. But it doesn't actually scare me, even though there were a couple of times when... no thanks. I got hit by like a... Ooh. Sure. There were a couple of times when, yeah, I did get basically hit by the whole spooky jump scare. Lemon party. But for the most part, Bloodborne wasn't really... it wasn't really that scary at all. I'll continue this in the next episode, but I'll see you... I'll see you next time. You know, like, comment, subscribe, and all that. I'm Uncle Robert. I'll see you next time, and I guess we'll continue this rambling conversation about horror.